On this week's 51%, we speak with author Emma Nadler about her first book, The Unlikely Village of Eden, on her experience as a parent of a child with a disability.
Now what I'm really focused on is how can we give her the very best life that we can.
We also hear from Mary Louise Kelly, co-host of NPR's All Things Considered, about her latest memoir on juggling work and motherhood. I'm Jessie King. It's all up next on 51%.
I was standing around like one of those girls I had seen in a movie. The whole world was a movie back then. I had my sunglasses on, I wanted to be seen without seeing shy Lolita. I wasn't really in it, I didn't really get it.
You're listening to 51%, a WAMC production dedicated to women's issues and experiences. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jessie King. Today we bring you stories of family and motherhood in honor of Mother's Day. Next week I want to specifically focus on new moms and postpartum recovery, what to expect once you're no longer expecting, if you will. But as every mother will tell you, there's no end date to parenthood. Once you become a mom, you're a mom for the rest of your life, even once the kids are out of the house. And there's no one way to be a parent. Everyone's experience is different. And as our first guest will tell us, it doesn't often go to plan. Emma Nadler is a psychotherapist and mother of two who called me from her home in Minnesota. Her debut memoir, The Unlikely Village of Eden, offers a candid look at her life as a parent of a child with disabilities. Nadler's daughter Eden was born with a rare genetic deletion impacting her physical, mental, and behavioral development. In the span of a single phone call from Eden's doctor, Nadler and her husband were ripped from the life that they had imagined for themselves and introduced to the realities faced by some 53 million caregivers across the U.S. With humor and vulnerability, Nadler details the complexities and joys of raising a person with a disability, and the ways all mothers deserve a support system to lean on. Nadler says she hopes it's the kind of book she was looking for when Eden was first diagnosed. At the time, it was a story she desperately wanted to hear, but couldn't find.
And I didn't want it to be a motherhood as martyrdom story. There's a lot of books out there that are about mothers who sacrificed everything for their child, and how the mom found, every sense of purpose in the child. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad I'm a mother. I feel really grateful for that role in my life. I adore my children, and I want to be a whole person. I just want to be a good enough mother. I want to be there for my kids, and I also wanted to have somewhat of a life, too.
This felt a lot to me like a story of acceptance. When you found out about Eden's condition, her genetic deletion is so rare that you were told there was really no roadmap on how it would affect her or what you might have to do in terms of care. You write a lot about just having to accept the unknown. You don't know what's coming next, but you just know that there's probably going to be a lot of trips to the hospital, and there is. How did you cope in those first few years after you got the news?
Yeah, well, I think you're really getting it. There was a lot of uncertainty and still is involved. And the truth is, though, there's always uncertainty in life. But it really brought that to the forefront more. And the way that I coped with it, I went through a lot of grief, and I still feel grief. I thought she would launch. I thought she would go to college if she wanted to go to college. I thought she might have children of her own if she chose to. And, she has severe autism, and she is disabled, and she's not going to launch in the way that I thought she would. She's going to need care for the rest of her life. And I think now what I'm really focused on is how can we give her the very best life that we can? Like, we didn't choose this, and I wouldn't have chosen this for her. I wouldn't. This is hard on her. She lives on a feeding tube. She has suffering related to vomiting and different pain she experiences. I wouldn't have chosen this for her, but this is the life that we have, and we're going to make it the best that we can make it. And I'm really deeply interested in that, and that's what I really try to stay focused on. And I do better and worse depending on the day on that. This isn't like the kind of thing where I arrived at some point and then I'm always going to accept every single part of this. I really want to be more nuanced than that, because I think that as people, acceptance is a practice. It's not an arrival point. I think the biggest way that I coped was to try to find people who understood in some way what I was going through and could walk alongside with me. That was the most helpful thing that I found.
I think that's a good point. It really sounds like you've gathered such an amazing community around Eden. The book obviously is called The Unlikely Village of Eden. But how did you find that village and put that support system together? Because I think that's something that a lot of moms need, and it can be hard to do. It can be hard to create.
Yeah, and I think that most people are struggling to find their village. And I really want to say that and normalize that, because especially as we've come through the pandemic, we are often isolated and we are often separate. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of our society right now, is that separation and is the loneliness that we can all feel, myself included. I'm really interested in continuing to build my village. I don't feel like it's well, I built a village, I'm great, I still sometimes struggle with loneliness. I'm a caregiver and I spend a lot of time at home, and that's hard. And I also have met incredible people along the way. The way that I was able to do that and meet the people that I've met is through relentlessly and boldly reaching out to people, which I would absolutely recommend to anyone. If you see someone you think, maybe I want to connect with them, do it. Be the person that reaches out. Be the mom at the playground that says, do you want to meet here next week? Here's my number. Do you ever want to do this again? Grab a coffee, go for a walk, whatever. Be the person that you want to have in your life, because most of us are kind of just waiting for other people to do that work for us. And I think what I found is when I was willing to take those risks and invite people in, there's a lot of people who want to connect, but we've kind of lost some of that skill and we don't know how to do it. And it's very awkward. And I'm yeah, you're right. It is awkward and embarrassing. I'm awkward and embarrassing sometimes. It's just it's fine. We're all doing it. But I really think that was what helped me and still helps me, is to be a person who's willing to take those risks.
You say in the book that a lot of the care work you did was invisible. What kind of work goes into your day-to-day, and is there anything you think we can do better to support the caregivers in our lives?
Yeah, it is invisible work because so much of it happens at home and tucked away. And even people who know me quite well, early readers of this memoir, are wow, I didn't even know half of what you were going through. And these are people I know well. And I think what we need most, I think about two things. One is systemic support to make mothers and parents and caregivers' lives easier through social programs, daycares, preschools, caregiver supports, respite. There's so many policy pieces to support caregivers. And I think, mothers and parents feel this so deeply. They felt it, through the height of the pandemic, and even still today, the reverberations of what it feels like to be almost feeling alone in raising your kids and what that is like. It's really intense. Even if you don't have a child with a disability, you just have a child, they need you. And you also have to somehow try to find a way to earn money or whatever, right? So there's just all these multiple roles and demands. I think it's tougher than ever for parents in those ways. And then I think just on a more small scale, I think we can reach out when we know that someone is struggling, even if it's past the point and you think, they might be doing better. I would say still reach out, because a lot of life's challenges don't have an expiration date. They don't just sort of if a kid is sick, it doesn't necessarily end when the child is out of the hospital. And I think for people who are struggling, I also really encourage people to ask for help and be as specific as possible, to really be putting out specific requests for what you need, and also for people who are lending a hand, what you can give.
At a certain point in the book, you make the conscious decision to actually scale back Eden's doctor's appointments, on the ones that aren't absolutely necessary anyway. Can you tell me a little more about that decision? What made you want to go that route?
Yeah, and this one is complex because, of course, I'm a fan of science and medicine, and we definitely are doing everything we can to create the best quality of life for our daughter, and we are pursuing treatments that she needs. So I want to make sure I'm clear that we're not skipping anything that is helpful to her that we know would benefit her. But there are so many appointments when you have a child who has so many medical needs. And it felt like our lives were passing us by while we sat in a waiting room. And so when I could scale back, I did, because I wanted my child to have a childhood. I want her to go to the park and be on the swing and feel the sun on her face and go places. And it's not easy for her to go places because of her severe autism. So that one is a work in progress, honestly. But we do spend a lot of time outside, and that works well when we can. We're doing what we can.
You talk a little bit about embracing this idea of parenting imperfectly. What do you mean by that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm part of this generation where there's so much pressure to be so much for our children. And it's a lot. It's a lot of pressures. It's a lot of pressure for mothers, especially, to be, I think, good all the time. I'm really more interested in the concept of good enough and what that could look like in our lives. And that isn't easy. I mean, I think that most mothers I talk with would say there's a part of this that they can really relate to, because that's what our cultural script is giving us. It's not our fault that we feel like we should be perfect. That isn't up to us. We didn't create that. That was handed to us. And I think that's a really important part of what I want to say is this isn't coming from me internally and whoever else is listening. It's not your fault. You're not to blame. We've been giving these messages, and I think it's time to create some new messages, some more livable messages.
Well, Emma, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me. Lastly, I was just wondering, what do you hope readers most take away from this book?
What I want readers and listeners to think about is that you're less alone than it might seem. And I hope that in reading this story, I hope you see yourself in it. I hope that it inspires you to reach out to others, because when we go through difficult things, I think there's nearly anything we can get through if we're not doing it alone.
Emma Nadler is a psychotherapist and mother of two. Her first book, The Unlikely Village of Eden, chronicles her experience as a parent of a child with a disability and explores how moms can find community when life doesn't go to plan. It's out now through Central Recovery Press. Emma, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
If you're a frequent listener of NPR, you're probably familiar with our next guest's voice. Here's a clue.
I confirmed with your staff last night that I would talk about Iran and Ukraine.
I just don't have anything else to say about that this morning.
I just want to give you another opportunity to answer this, because as you know, people who work for you in your department, people who have resigned from this department under your leadership, saying you should stand up for the diplomats who work here.
I don't know who these unnamed sources are you're referring to. I can tell you this.
These are not unnamed sources. This is your senior advisor, Michael McKinley.
Mary Louise Kelly is a co-host of NPR's award-winning afternoon news magazine, All Things Considered, during which she has interviewed everyone from pop stars to, as you heard there, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Kelly's reporting for NPR has taken her all over the world, including war zones, and as you can imagine, that makes it difficult to be present at home. In her new memoir, It Goes So Fast, The Year of No Do-Overs, Kelly talks about juggling life and the career she loves, and the all-too-familiar pressure felt by many parents, but particularly mothers, to have and do it all. With her two teenage sons about to graduate high school, Kelly sets out to make the most of their last year home. She recounts that year of no do-overs in her book, and with WAMC's Ian Pickus.
It's coincidental, but I had the experience of reading Ari Shapiro's new book and yours back to back.
Okay.
You both have a lot of journalistic adventures out there. Ari does not want children. Children are a huge part of your life. How did you decide that you wanted to be a mother?
Good question. And now you've got me thinking about Ari, who I will share that here at NPR headquarters, our desks are, literally like 18 inches apart from each other. There is a wall in between, but it's not very thick. So I feel like I have lived the writing of Ari's book with him. And I think he'd probably say the same for me. And they are very different books because we're very different people. I don't know that I had a big moment of reckoning with, do I want to be a mom? It was just something I always expected would come in my life, and it did 19 years ago. My first was born, and then his little brother 2 years and change after, so they are both teenagers now. I'm not conflicted over whether to continue my career. I love my career. I'm good at it. I hope that doesn't sound unhumble, but I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of okay with saying that. I love doing it. It brings meaning to my days. I think what I wanted to reckon with the book was that trying to balance that, wanting to be good at my career and wanting to be a good mom and showing up, it felt like 19, 20 years ago when I was embarking on this whole adventure of motherhood and being a journalist. There were so many chances to get it right, to do all the things, to be in all the places I wanted to be, whether that was, on the playground on a pretty morning with my kids, or in the newsroom doing a big interview, or out in the world reporting on some interesting story where people were changing their communities or their countries, and wanting to talk to me about it. And I get to tell those stories. There were so many chances to do all the things, and there still are, but I've hit my 50s now and realized that the clock that was running on, the being a mother while your kids are children, because I'm now about to be a mom while my kids are also adults, that clock was ticking fast, and it started feeling like it was ticking much faster as they got older, and the number of opportunities to make choices about how I spend my days dwindled. And that's what I was really reckoning with. So I wrote this book in real time about last year, which was the last year both of my kids were guaranteed to live at home, because my oldest was a senior in high school and about to leave the nest and spread his wings.
As you looked back on that year, and as now you are reflecting on it, how do you think you did in achieving the balance in the last year you had?
Oh my goodness. I certainly haven't figured the whole thing out. I wish I had some magic wand or, I don't know, secret sauce that I had discovered that I could share with you. I thought this whole juggle, leaning in, leaning out, whatever you want to call it, I thought it was going to get easier as my kids got older. And to my surprise, it felt like it got harder. Because again, the stakes got higher, like the things they needed me for, there was nobody else who could substitute. They needed their mom. And the number of chances, as I say, to make those choices became fewer and fewer. To give an example, my oldest son, his whole life in kind of, from when he could walk, basically revolved around soccer. He's a great soccer player. He loves it. He's always played. His games for his varsity high school team are weekdays at 4:00. And this other thing happens every day at 4:00, which is All Things Considered goes on air. And I'm supposed to be in the studio anchoring it. And it is not possible, despite all the great technological, advances that we enjoy, to be in both places at once. And so I missed his games. I missed so many of his games. And I was sad about that, but he would come home and tell me about them. And his dad made, as many games as he could, and it was fine. And I didn't feel the weight of it when there were like a zillion games, this infinite parade of games. It seemed like they would never end. But then your kid's a senior, and they're not infinite anymore. You can count on your own two hands how many games I have left to make this choice. And it was a wake-up call. And I really thought hard about, I don't have any more do-overs. I don't have any more chances. If I'm going to make a different choice, I need to make it right now, today.
If you don't mind my asking, I actually found myself kind of gasping late in the book when you reveal that at some point late in this year that you chronicle, you and your husband hit a rough patch, and I think he asked for a separation. Did that experience kind of reframe things for you also?
So I will answer that by saying that since I wrote this book, my husband and I have divorced.
Okay.
And I think for the sake of my family and privacy, I will leave it there, other than to say how proud I am of 25 years of marriage and that he is a great father. And that I wish him well in his next chapter and as he figures out his own decisions on all of these choices.
Well, how are you doing?
I'm okay. And I'm happy to be here. And I'm happy to be putting a book out in the world because it's such a different challenge. You know, our day jobs, as you know, are rewarding and challenging and, ephemeral, if I can put that word on it. You show up to do a radio show every day, and some days everything goes beautifully, and other days it feels like a train wreck. But one way or the other, the next day is a clean slate. And that has its really positive points. You get to wake up every day and think, what's the most interesting thing going on in the world today? What questions do I have about it? Who could answer them? All right, let's book them. Let's have them come talk to me live on All Things Considered today. That is the most interesting, fun, challenging job I can imagine, and I feel so grateful to get to do it. On the other hand, a show of 2 weeks ago, an interview that aired 2 years ago, it feels like a different lifetime because you're racing on to the next story and the next conversation and the next important thing that we need to bear witness to. And so the idea of slowing it all down and really thinking intentionally through the choices I was making in this one particular year felt like such an interesting challenge. And I learned things about myself and my family that I wouldn't have known had I not taken the time to do that.
You, I believe, did move back home after college for a little while. Is the invitation open to your kids? So maybe you can tack on a bonus year?
Always. I did indeed move back home. My first actual real grown-up paid job out of college was writing for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is my hometown newspaper where I grew up. I think my first actual assigned beat was covering the Cobb County night cop shift, which involved listening to the police scanner late at night in Cobb County and deciding when it was worth getting in a car and racing over and going to see what the heck was going on. And I moved back home into my childhood bedroom while I did that and was so grateful for that. And yes, to my boys, if you are listening, I may have written a book about the end of your childhood, but my home is always our home. It is always open to you. And gosh, I would be so happy and so lucky if one of these days, after they've gone and done all the things they want to do in college or grad school or wherever they go, if they came back home, that'd be great. It'll always be home.
Well, we have it on tape if they need it.
I am on the record.
Mary Louise, thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for taking the time.
This was a pleasure. Thank you, Ian.
One last story before we go, not directly related to Mother's Day per se, but of a family business that is kicking butt here in New York's capital region. Sunny's Farm and Kitchen in Troy offers authentic Korean cuisine made with ingredients sourced through its local farm, and features the mother-daughter team of chef Chun-hee Kim and her daughter, owner Gina An. If that wasn't enough, the business also offers a range of services to the local immigrant and refugee community. And as our associate producer Jody Cowan reports, Sunny is just one big in a national competition.
Barclays would just like to say to you that those votes got you to be the grand prize winner of $60,000.
My parents are in the background too.
How do you feel about winning $60,000?
Sunny's Farm and Kitchen in Troy was selected as the grand prize winner in Barclays' third annual Small Business Big Wins promotion last week. The competition, sponsored by Barclays' business card team, was created during the pandemic to provide a much-needed boost to small businesses while highlighting their stories of resilience. Over 14,000 submissions were accepted for this year's contest as each qualifying small business shared its story and struggles through photos and essays. Sunhees provides authentic Korean food for dine-in, takeout, and catering at its local market, and it employs immigrant Americans from all over the world, providing free virtual English classes for adults and other community outreach initiatives. Sunhees learned in April it had been selected to the top 10 finalist stage, in which a public voting period of 10 days would decide the outcome and ultimately the allotment of a $250,000 prize pool amongst the finalists. Sunhe's owner and founder Gina Ahn highlighted some of the unique factors that helped her business stand out.
There's a lot of great businesses on that roster, but we are the only AAPI-owned business. We're the only business that's based in New York State. So we feel like, this is something that we can rally over, really garner local support, and also use this as an opportunity to put Troy, New York on the map while sharing our story.
Commemorating National Small Business Week, Barclays proclaimed Sunhe's Farm and Kitchen as the winner and the recipient of the $60,000 grand prize. After the victory, Ahn said her confidence in her team and the support of the local community helped to prepare her for the win.
You hope for the best, but you also prepare for the worst, which really wasn't all that bad. All the runners-up were walking away with at least $5,000. And for me, I really felt like and like our whole team, we felt like we put our best foot forward. For those 10 days of the voting period, we told as many people as we could. A lot of our customers were excited about it. So, people who just see on the street, they'll be like, hey, good luck with the contest, and we're voting for you every day. And so I think even if we had not made grand prize winner, just all that encouragement and support and rallying and being on people's radar, it was really something.
As for the $60,000, Ahn says it will go immediately into strengthening her business's community outreach branch, as well as supporting and expanding her restaurant's daily operations.
We're going to set aside a good majority of it toward Sunny's Community Place, the educational programming for immigrant adults. The rest of it, I think, just going towards some more systematic changes and improvements to the restaurant, working on the back patio, making sure that staff also feel appreciated in the process. And then I think one of the things that we wanted to do was prepare a little childcare space where customers can be more comfortable. And the next step, I think, is involving staff in that process and asking them, hey, what do you think we need? What do you think will make us better, improve our systems, and make your job easier and more enjoyable? And so asking for their input and seeing what are some small things and immediate things that we could do with the money to make some lasting changes.
The staff of Sunhe's isn't resting on its laurels, already working on the first annual Sunhe's Community Place Gala for June 1st. Ahn hopes the win will bring new attention to the event, which in turn will further engage the community and bring new collaboration.
So I think just this cash influx has been a real encouragement and boost, and we're excited, even as Sunny's Farm and Kitchen being the main sponsor for the event. But we're excited to collaborate with other people. We're kind of dubbing it as a fancy indoor night market, but with the purpose of sharing our stories and what we've been doing at the community place.
Sunhe's Farm and Kitchen is located at 95 and 97 Ferry Street in Troy, New York. There's more at WAMC.org. For 51%, I'm Jody Cowan.
That's a wrap on this week's 51%. 51% is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio in Albany, New York. It's produced and hosted by me, Jesse King, with again help from our associate producer, Jody Cowan. Our executive producer is Dr. Alan Chartock, and our theme is Lolita by the Albany-based artist Girl Blue. Just a reminder that you can listen to 51% anytime at WAMCpodcasts.org or wherever you get your podcasts. On social media, we're at WAMC Radio, and you can stay in the loop by signing up for our weekly newsletter, Airwaves, at WAMC.org. We hope you'll join us next week. Until then, I'm Jessie King for 51%.
I was every single girl, I was nobody else, I was so sure of myself. I was 15 and a half, he was a hollow laugh. And I lost my cool somewhere along the way. The nightmare down the hallway, I had to learn how to look away. I lost my cool, no electricity, hot rain on the concrete, sweet melting lips.